Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GM Philosopher, and today we're talking about how to handle D&D HP bloat like a boss, okay? This video was inspired by a question I got from Marcow 4846. Thank you so much, Marcow, for this great question. Here's the question. Marco said, I have a question I'd love to hear your opinion on. Do you see HP bloat as a problem? And if yes, how to handle it? I find it increasingly tiresome and time consuming to track and calculate HP of characters and monsters as their level increases, somewhat bogging down combat. On the other hand, the HP system is so deeply integrated in D&D, if you would change it to something else, you would also have to rebalance everything else, and it would hardly be D&D anymore. Anyhow, thanks for the great video. I think your YouTube channel is fantastic. Best wishes from Germany. Well, hey, Marcow, 4846, thank you so much. Great question. Thank you for those positive vibes. And in this video, I am going to tell you exactly how to handle this D&D bloat problem. Do I think it is a problem? I think it can be a problem, but I have methods that I've learned to use to handle it, and I'm going to share my 4-step process with you in this video. In this video, you're going to learn 3 of my most essential tips for stopping HP bloat from ruining your games, and especially ruining your battles and turning them into just a long-term boring slog. And tip number 4 is the ultimate tip. It is the one that I use as my secret weapon to absolutely make it so that HP bloat is never, ever, ever a problem in my combats. It hasn't been for years because of tip number 4. So you're going to want to stay till tip number 4 because that's the big bad one. And it is going to basically get set up by these other 3. So let's dive into it. Now, before we dive into it, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. I'm trying to grow my channel to 5,000 subs, and like a humble, low HP adventurer who sometimes has to fight a monster or 2 along the way, I am trying very hard to get past that 5,000 sub mark because I want to grow my channel to amazing heights. So every time you hit that thumbs up, every time you drop a comment, every time you hit that subscribe button, you help me grow my channel. So thank you so much in advance. Just do that for me and I will be just eternally grateful to you. All right, let's dive into this. Tip number 1. Don't freak out. If a few smaller battles leave your PCs mostly unscathed, you might think to yourself, uh-oh, the HP bloat. These creatures aren't even hitting the PCs. They're not doing enough damage. But it's really important not to freak out about this and just consider these kind of like lesser challenging combats as test runs for how much HP you're going to need to threaten to give them a proper challenging fight. I like to run smaller fights and I like to take notes. I like to take note of like who got beat up, who was pretty much unscathed, who, even though they took a lot of punishment, was still up and running because they have these large HP pools. I like to use smaller fights as sort of a data analysis leading up to more challenging like boss fights. That leads me to point number 2. Do your due diligence leading up to important battles. You want to be looking at these small battles as an opportunity to gauge the strength of your players, okay? Now, personally, I think D&D works best when you kind of have one combat in every session at least. However, not every combat is going to be a big boss fight. There are going to be some tavern brawls. There are going to be, some bandits are going to try to surround the party. They're going to run into a monster in the sewer. There are going to be some fights that are not going to be massively challenging, but these are crucial because you can use them to collect data about how big your big bad for this arc or story arc or whatever needs to be in order to truly challenge and threaten the party. And also you need to know how many goons they're going to have, etc. So I like to kind of, use these smaller fights as a data analysis tool. And this leads me to point number 3. Don't be afraid to alter monster stat blocks to dish out more damage, okay? You can also alter monster stat blocks even during the battle to help knock out those larger HP pools if things start to drag out. Now, sometimes the monsters have too much HP and it turns into a slog. But it's pretty easy, in my opinion, to just kind of erase some hit points, not really even share with the party that you did. This is not a problem, and I'm going to do this if things start to drag out too much on the side of the monsters having too much HP, or if I think it's going to be like an overrun and I'm not wanting to do that to the players, okay? This doesn't happen super often. Sometimes it happens. When it does, I dial it back to try to make it so that that end comes at that magic point, like where it feels like it was life-threatening, but it doesn't actually destroy the whole party, okay? You can also alter those monster stat blocks to dish out more damage. A lot of times, my group tends to run very HP heavy. They tend to run gear heavy. So if I'm pulling a monster out of the monster manual, I'm beefing up those attack dice. I'm beefing up those extra damage dice, like modifiers. I am definitely beefing up HP, generally speaking. I'm generally beefing up their armor class, basically raising their level, because the truth is if I just threw the creatures as is in the book appropriate to the CR level that the book says they are, my players are going to just wipe the floor with everything. My players tend to be pretty powerful, and I do give them a lot of magic items and gear. So, I've got to really crank up the damage output of these monsters, and that's okay. Alter those stat blocks. Do what you got to do. Now, before we lead into my fourth tip, the best tip, this is the one that has saved me from having so many combats kind of become a slog or a disaster. This is the one that has absolutely eliminated HP bloat on the part of player characters. Before I jump into this, I want you to drop a comment. I want you to let me know how you handle HP bloat. If you think it's a problem, how do you solve it? What techniques do you do? Drop those suggestions into the comments for Marcow 4846. Let's bring Marcow maximum value in this video. Now let's go to point number 4. This is my number one favorite way to deal with this. If you need to, have some super deadly bloodied abilities ready, just in case your players start to really crush the opposition without taking enough damage to make the fight challenging, okay? Bloodied was an ability in 4E that basically said when a creature reached halfway in their HP pool, so they took half damage to where they were half dead, basically. Not like half dead, but half their HP had been used up. It unlocked more powerful abilities that they could then use on the party. And I think this is amazing effect and a great way to deal with these things. Now, here's the great thing about it. You can have some bloodied abilities ready, but if the fight is already a challenge and is already down to tooth and nail, you do not have to use them. But if the PCs start stomping your monsters and you're realizing that this fight isn't challenging enough to be fun and to make it that close nail biter that you want, turn on those bloodied abilities and start dishing out some pain, and don't be afraid to make them hurt. And the reason for why this is realistic and works for me is because by the time players are halfway into the fight, there's already been a lot of carnage, and these enemies, be they humanoids, be they monsters, be they dragons, large insects, rats, vermin, a necromancer, whatever it is, it makes sense that as they get closer to death and as they get closer to defeat, they're going to ramp up the ferocity because they're facing their demise. They're going to ramp it up and they're going to unleash their most powerful stuff yet. They're going to call on that bloodlust they have to try to overcome this enemy who they maybe underestimated. And this to me makes great thematic sense. I think it works great. So that's what I do really across the board. I always have some bloodied abilities ready. A lot of times I'll just make them homebrew and I'll make them thematic to the situation and the creature. I love to make like homebrew bloodied abilities because I like to catch my players off guard. They all know the monster manual stat blocks. Like they know pretty much what to expect. So I like to throw in stuff that they wouldn't expect and really surprise them, make it different. Okay. So anyway, there you have it. That's how I handle HP bloat. That's how I deal with this problem. And it's never ever a problem in my games. I never feel like this is an issue, and it's because of these 4 tips. So let me know what you think. Give me that thumbs up and the subscribe. Help me grow my channel. And hey, I will see all of you awesome people on the next one.